Hi everyone, and welcome to 60 Minutes of Life Experience with yours truly, Summer Sullivan. Welcome to the show today. I know I've been a little MIA, and that's because college is literally killing me, but this is my last week of this semester, and then I'm done for a week until I have to start summer classes. But I'm still going to do this video and try and edit it and post it, and then try to remain consistent for the rest of the summer. But make sure you're subscribed to support this poor college student. So today it's going to be pretty low key. I'm going to be doing a Q&A. So over on my Instagram, which is Summer K Sullivan, go give it a follow. I'm a lot more active on there than I am here. I had my followers ask me questions about myself and my book, and I answered a lot of them there, but I wanted to answer them all on here as well. So that's what we're going to do today. So, without further ado, question number 1. How did you get started writing? So, this is a pretty easy one. I've been writing for as long as I can remember. I've had so many notebooks that I have ended up finding of just like the crappiest handwriting ever in these like one-page short stories that I wrote when I was like 11, 12. And they're terrible, but it's just writing has always been something that I can fall back on. It's definitely helped me to manage a lot of my stress and anxiety, and I did it like really loyally until like high school. Then it was kind of sporadically, like I'd go through 3 months where I write a whole bunch and then I wouldn't pick it up for a year. And then of course I started writing again when COVID hit, and that's when I got the Fall to Darkness series, which leads me into my next question, which, when did you realize you wanted to be an author? And this is a great question because I first wrote The Last Heir without having any intention of publishing it. I wrote it for fun, and I wrote it for myself, and I wrote it because it made me happy. And I'm glad, because now sometimes when I write, I get anxious about what are people gonna think, and that was so not a problem when I was writing the first time. I was just writing for fun. I didn't have any secret agenda. I didn't have anything like that. I was just writing because I loved it, and it was only after I finished that I shared the book with some people and they encouraged me to publish. So I'm really glad that I had that opportunity to kind of write without fear of judgment. And yeah. Question number 3 is, where did I get the idea for my series? I used to have a video on this way back, but I think I ended up deleting it, so I'm glad to bring it up again. I found the idea for the Fall to Darkness series in an old folder of mine called Writing Ideas, and it was actually in a separate folder called Summer's Super Big Project, and I was like, wonder what this is. So I clicked into it, and it was this 50-page story about, it was a fantasy story, and it didn't really have any of the same characters, but it had the basic ideas. So you had the shadow wall, the power of the shadow, 2 warring countries, and the kind of death of one person opens the wall. And I was like, this is all right. Like, this is pretty good. I'm like, if I could take some of my ideas now and some new characters, but those original ideas, and put them all together, I think it could be pretty good. And so the Fall to Darkness world was born. And here we are. And that brings me to today's sponsor, me. Check out my books on falltodarkness.com right now. And you can use code SPRING for 20% off your order of anything. So pause the video and go check it out. Okay, question number 4 is, do you have a plan for your books or do you just write and let the story happen as you go? So there's not really a yes or no answer to this one. I always like to write an outline of where the story's gonna go. I kind of go chapter by chapter and just do a few words of what I imagine happening in that chapter. I have done that for every book I have written, but 100% of the time I end up doing something different than the outline. I almost like to say sometimes the characters write the story for me. There have been a lot of times, and not necessarily in the 2 that I have out right now, but more in this next one, where I've had a plan for a character to go do something, and then just something totally different happens. And it's kind of funny, but so kind of a little bit of both, where I have an outline and I have a plan, but a lot of times I just end up straying from that and writing as I go. Okay, the next question is, which character were you most excited to write? This one's easy. It was definitely Sonny, and that was because I kind of had a plan with every character I was writing. Like with Alita and Ryder, but Sonny I didn't really know what I was doing with, so it's kind of fun as Sonny's kind of discovering herself as the story goes on. I was discovering her, and it was really fun. A lot of times, like, Sonny kind of wrote herself. Like, I didn't even feel like I was writing. I felt like she was making the decision, so that was fun. This is kind of related to the last question, is what character is your favorite and what character is your least favorite to write? Favorite to write is Sonny, probably. Sonny and Alita, I both just love writing. Mostly because I feel like they're the easiest to write because they were teenage girls, and at the time that I wrote it, I was a teenage girl, so it was just really easy to connect, and it was super easy to put myself in their shoes. And a lot of times I used to say, like, I had my Sonny days and my Alita days. Like, I had a lot of days when I felt like really angry, and those would be my Sonny days, and I'd feel a lot of days where I felt motivated but also a little out of control, so those were my Alita days. So they were definitely my favorite to write. My least favorite to write is probably Ryder. Only I like Ryder a lot. He's a really interesting character to me, but he's a 36-year-old man and I'm a 20-year-old female, so it just, at times I want to make sure he's realistic, and that is just hard sometimes. So he's probably my least favorite to write. And the next question is, which character do you feel is the most like you? So as I said a couple minutes ago, I said I have my Sonny days and I have my Alita days, but I definitely think I'm the most like Alita, just because I don't think there's any point in the story where Alita knows what she's doing. She is out of control. She is kind of a menace. She is just crazy, and I just love how so many times she just like has these elaborate plans and they just go so wrong, and I just feel it, like that's my life. Like, I just make these plans and they go so wrong so fast. So I definitely think I'm most like Alita in that, but a lot of times I'm also like Sonny, and I like to say I'm like Sahar too, because she's a very powerful, like courageous character. So I try to be like all of my characters. Next question is, do you base your characters off of real life people, or are they all made up? It's another good question. So kind of not a yes or no. I don't have any characters that's like distinctly based off one person, but I kind of take traits from people I know or things that have happened to them, and I kind of incorporate them into characters. For example, like, I have a lot of amazing friends, and I try to include stuff that reminds me of them into my characters to make them as relatable as possible. I also on my TikTok have this video that's like, everyone who's ever done me wrong is gonna end up a villain in my book. I haven't done that yet, but like, maybe I will. This is kind of going outside of the actual content of the book and to more being an author. What is the most difficult part of being an author? Definitely the judgment, on all levels. Like, when I first started it to where I am now, there's been like all kinds of judgment, and I have learned to kind of just let things roll off my back, and I'm still learning, and I'm still learning to take constructive criticism better, but like, people can be super ruthless. Like, yeah, definitely the judgment, but there's, compared to the bad things that have happened, there have been so many amazing, rewarding things. For example, I had someone send me a message saying that your book helped me through a really hard time in my life, and it helped me get through some grief, and that was like, that made all the negative reviews or mean comments I've gotten worth it, just to know that I kind of helped one person out. So it's definitely the judgment, but in the end it's worth it. So. Okay, we're getting down to the last couple of questions here. Do you experience writer's block, and how do you deal with it? Yes, and I think any like author can tell you writer's block is the worst, but as far as how do I deal with it, I mostly get writer's block when I've had envisioned a scene for a long time and I really want to write that scene, but I have to actually build up to that scene. So sometimes I just do a little sneak and I just write the scene that I want to write. I'll open a different document, I'll just write the whole scene, and I'll get it all out of my system, and then I will do the build up for it. So I kind of like skip around, and there's no rule that says you have to write in chronological order. Just make sure you go back and make sure it makes sense. But that's helped me get out of writer's block a lot of times, just to write what I want to write and then go back and fill in the blanks. But as far as like generally, I just say it's easier for me to write when I'm by myself. I turn off my phone, I turn on like some ambient music, I'll get my favorite food, my favorite drink, and just sit down and like force myself to work through it. Definitely, like, if I had to recommend one thing, it would be to put your phone away, because when my mind wanders, I just immediately pick up my phone. So put your phone away and just kind of push through. Hopefully that works for you. It doesn't work for me every time, but most of the time it does. Okay. Would you ever write outside the fantasy genre? Yes, absolutely. Like, fantasy, I love writing fantasy, but that, like, sometimes I wish I could just be like, oh, Alita's favorite musical artist or is this, or like Sonny's favorite movie is this, because like in my mind sometimes I imagined if I put them in the real world I could see them having very distinct personalities. So I would love to write like a mystery or a thriller or even like a romance, just so I could include like real life stuff like music and countries and stuff like that. So I definitely can envision myself, and if you haven't watched it, I did a video on some old stories I had written. I could definitely foresee myself taking one of those stories and expanding on it, just like how I did with this series. So, okay, last question, and I'm excited to answer this question. Can you tease any other books you'll be writing? So, I am currently working on book 3. In fact, like, here, it's all in here. I'm really, really excited about book 3. It's actually, like, I love it so much more than the other 2 I've written. I love those ones as well, but I really am to a point where I feel like I can go so many places with my characters. Book 3 is my favorite so far. And I'm also working on a short story about 2 characters in The True King, and if you guess the characters below, I'll confirm or deny if they're right. So I had someone mention to me like, I would love to see the backstory of blank in blank, and I was like, great idea. So I am hoping to publish that before I publish my 3rd book, and it wouldn't be like a print, it would be like on my Patreon, or I'd release it to my people on my newsletter. But I am so excited about that because it's just gonna be more casual, more fun. And yeah, so I'm working on those right now. And again, if you want to see some possible ideas for future books outside of My Fault of Darkness, go watch my last video, because I'm really leaning towards doing that mystery novel, or possibly the one where they're all in the future. Like, I really like those ideas. Also, I already have a certain character in this series in mind to do a spin-off of, which I think would be totally different from this series, but with a lot of the same world building and characters. And I've also kind of like a little bit worked on that. So yeah, so those are some of my future things. So stay tuned, definitely. Okay, so that is all I have for you today. But if you have any more questions, comment below. I'll answer them either right in the comments or maybe in a new video. I actually really enjoyed doing the Q&A. It was fun to answer your guys' questions. Make sure to go follow all my socials and check out my books on faultofdarkness.com if you haven't already. If you are in college right now, I'm giving you all my love and support because it's difficult this week. But we got this. If I can do it, you can do it. So I will see you guys next week. Bye!